Today I wanted to take a close look at the PlayStation racing wheel, the Racing Wheel Apex. But this one is going to be an interesting one because it's going to be wireless. I noticed this on one of those, let's say, computer stores, and I was really intrigued. With a simple reason because we don't see a lot of those wireless wheels anymore. And Hori is one of those brands I have reviewed before for many different systems, where I was overall quite positive about it. Let's see how this one actually is. So the maximum battery duration of 10 hours, so having in 10 meters of, let's say, connectivity. So this is going to be an interesting one. But let's open it up. So the first thing I do wonder, like, how will the connectivity be? Is it going to be a plug-and-play situation, or is it going to be absolutely a freaking nightmare? So normally I don't really buy a lot of these wireless wheels if I had the opportunity, with a simple reason because my experience were quite bad throughout the years. But yeah, we cannot really compare it because that was actually racing wheel solutions many years ago, where the technology was so much different. But let's take a close look what we're getting inside of the package. So when it comes to, let's say, the Hori, they call this thing many different names. You have like Pro Deluxe versions, but there is a lot of difference. So first of all, they changed out the pedals. That is one thing I already noticed, because the first generation had the other ones that they're going to be flipping underneath of the pedals. In here we're finding the manual, and I must say they're doing a great job. You can see a lot of explanation about the racing wheel, because this thing comes packed up with a lot of cool features. So let's see what is going on over here. We're having the racing wheel. And of course we're going to be needing all of the connectivity. Let's see, we're having over here a cable. I think this is going to be the dongle, the bracket of Hori with the pin for connecting it to my desk. Okay, but let's unbox that. Let's see what's over there. And yeah, there was nothing much difference when it comes to, let's say, the wired version. So with Hori, we do have all kinds of different products from them. I must say I've reviewed many things like arcade sticks, gamepads, and I must say in general I'm quite satisfied. So let's see if they keep continuing doing this and making this also a very nice positive review. So first of all, this is more like a low budget solution. If you're going to be looking for something professional, I think you're not going to be actually wanting to buy something like this. I can already tell you that. So in here we're having the cable. That is quite a long one over there, just an USB-C cable, but a nice quality one. The dongle, and you know, always be very careful with these freaking things, because I think with the older version, I think it was Trustmaster, had like this wireless cockpit thing, and the dongles were always gone. So we're having a different configuration with the pedals, because now we do have a separate plastic piece. That is what has been changed out through the PlayStation 4 version. You can just click it in like that. And later on we're going to be doing a comparison with some other cool stuff. So the manual itself explaining how you need to connect. So if you have any problems, you don't know what to do, you can actually look into the manual. And you can actually see there is a switch for PS4 and PS5 and even the PC. So that's interesting how that's going to be working out. But we're going to be focusing on the PlayStation 5. And in here we have the racing wheel. So let's see what's going on over here. The weight itself is quite nice. Nothing wrong with it. I do wonder, is it going to be charged or what's going on with this, because they're saying about something overcharged. Let's see what's going on. There we're having charge on the inside. LEDs turning on, so we're ready to go. Underneath we do have rubber pads, but let's do a quick overview of the racing wheel itself. So comfortability, I must say that it's absolutely positive with the Hori racing wheels. I find these things very pleasant to actually play with. However, so when you're going to be looking at how many degrees this thing can do, you can actually see it is limited to a certain amount of rotation. And that is what you're getting with these more like budget old school wheels too. But don't get me wrong, it's absolutely great, because I must say that when it comes to racing with these kind of wheels, mostly, or also like the professional wheels, I'm always like to put in on some limitation when it comes to rotation, giving like a completely different experience. However, if you want to have like full simulation mode, yeah, there's another reason why not to pick up a simple Hori racing wheel. But the overall design of the racing wheel is quite nice. One of the things I personally really love is actually having this nice looking, well, I would say not metallic, but this glossy painted piece of plastic. But at their side, they don't have any leather that we have seen with Logitech racing wheels. They're using like the old school design with some rubber coating. And at the top, it's just plain plastic. Nothing fancy going on. So if you're going to be looking at the controls, everything is going to be utilized like with the original controller. You can actually see we're having a D-pad, we're having the home button over here. Even L3 and R3 are implemented in the steering wheel, having the shoulder buttons over there. And if you're going to be looking at the top, and here we're going to be finding a lot of different options. So let's see how we can freaking focus this thing. It's quite difficult. So, okay, that's much better. So over here we're having the switch for having the D-pad, left joystick and the right joystick. It's convenient if you're going to be messing with certain games. Having over here the switch for PS5, PS4 and PC. And then we're having the normal and steering. But what is really interesting, if you're going to be looking into that normal and steering mode, you can actually switch between this mode. So if you don't have a really good compatibility with a certain game on the PlayStation, you can switch with this particular mode. If you just have an older game for the PS4 or PC, and this way the racing wheel is going to be perfectly or at least better calibrated for the game. So I'm guessing for the dead zone and etc. But let's connect it and let's have some fun. The pedals are slightly better than the older ones in my opinion, with a simple reason. You can see there's difference in space, and that has to do with not the pad only, but just the, not only the resistance has been changed, let's move this freaking thing there, not only the resistance has been changed, but also the way of the travel. And I think that's kind of cool, like a very tiny difference of a spring and the travel, and this way we can actually just enjoy having a better experience of the acceleration or the brake. Assembly is quite straightforward when it comes to that. So the only thing they're going to be doing is putting this thing in the right position, and we're going to be sticking the pin in. That's it. You're going to be rotating and you're going to be putting force on this like that. The only thing I'm going to be using is some WD-40 to grease it a little bit, because if you're going to be using it for the first time, simply because of the black paint, oh man, it's going to be absolutely a nightmare to assemble. So let's do that first, and let's connect this thing to the PlayStation, everything. And with some WD-40. Woohoo! It spins perfectly. But the assembly of this thing is quite nice and quite easy. But still, there's a little bit of wiggle to it. And that's to do because my desk is way too thin. And I can maybe put some cardboard in it to make it a little bit thicker. That helps out. But there's one thing you need to take consideration, that it still got some wiggle. But it's really tight. Yes. I didn't shut down my console so like it should be. However, let's plug in the dongle and let's see what's going on. How do I need to stick this bloody thing in? There we go. Ah. Let's connect. And let's see how great this works. So yeah, out of the box, no problem. This works like a charm. So let's start off with some project cars, Wreckfest, Gran Turismo, and some dirt. This is going to be a lot of fun. And let's clean that one up. But let's see how this thing works out of the box. So first of all, we're playing actually in PlayStation 4 game on the PlayStation 5. I've been setting the controller or the wheel itself to PS5. And yeah, there was no problem. So let's get into the game. Let's have like a custom event or whatever it is. And let's see how accurate this thing is. Can I switch this way? Yep, I can actually do that too. But let's start a race and let's see what's going on. So I'm really curious how this wheel will actually react and how it will work. So the pedals seem to be working out of the box, so I'm very glad with that. So let's see what's going on. Okay, so we don't have a really massive dead zone. I've been putting this on normal mode. So you know, let's see what just happened if we're going to be putting it on steering wheel. Okay, so it automatically says that I need to reconnect the controller. So that doesn't work at all. So it was quite interesting to see actually. So let's reconnect the controller again. And let's resume. Let's see what we can actually do now. Is this going to be any fun? I really love the pedals of this thing. I do need to get used to this. There is no vibration function, so far I know. Don't feel it. So that's quite unfortunate. So this is going to be really back to the basics. The old school times of the retro racing wheels. Moving on to the driving simulator. So let's see how accurate this thing is. This is going to be such a weird overall experience. We can actually see the brake and acceleration. We can just test it over there. And I must say that it works quite well. I love the springs of the pedals because you can actually have a certain amount of force onto it, so you don't automatically push it in the maximum position. But also this works quite well. I don't have really any weird thing going on. So when it comes to playing Gran Turismo, this is absolutely a lot of fun. Absolutely. Still missing, I do miss a little bit of the feedback, you know, the vibration at least. Again, particularly if you're going to be playing simulation and you just want to get into, let's say, a certain like amount of force into the corner. You can actually feel the car losing its grip, and that's the part I'm actually only can hear now and not feeling, and so there's a little bit of a missed opportunity. I understand if they're not going to be adding a vibration, it will save up a lot of battery life of the racing wheel itself, because this thing, as the box says, around like 10 hours of freaking playing time, and that's a lot, you know. So in that case, I just messed that part up, but let's move to something wicked with the Wreckfest, because that is going to be a crazy game to play. Let's see what's going on. Let's see if we can get into the game and if this is going to be any fun, because this is such a completely different overall experience. So at this point I'm not going to be using the shifter whatsoever. So one of the things I really wonder about Wreckfest, because this is such a completely different game with the mechanics. Is this going to be a playable situation? Oh crap. Oh, that's on me. And in particular, I did play a lot of the games like Flat Out. I don't know if you have ever heard of those, but those games were quite difficult to play with the racing wheel because the cars were so unpredictable when it comes for playing and racing. Of course, we have different undergrounds, so we have like dirt, we have like asphalt, and we're going to be having all kinds of different ways to actually having different kind of controls. And because we don't have any feedback from the wheel, we cannot really feel the difference. But yeah, I think it goes quite well. Don't have any turbo whatsoever. Nope. So moving on to Dirt 5. Man, I love this game. I love rally, but it's going to be like a next level because this is such a chaotic game where everything is going to be happening with no force feedback and with no rumble function. So let's see if I can even get into the third or the second, let's say, place. But let's have some fun and let's see how it actually works. So far everything seems to be working fine. Acceleration with the pedals. Oh boy. This is such a crazy game. I think this is one of the more difficult games to actually play with a racing wheel. Oh, particularly, oh, that's what I mean. It's particularly that normally you have like a little bit of force feedback, but nope, we're not having that. Oh man, it's almost like freaking unplayable sometimes. But so far, let's get a hang of it. Let's see, I see that's what I mean. Like you don't have really this idea how much you need to steer back to the different way. Okay, there we go, come on, come. Let's just play a little bit with acceleration. There we go, getting the hang of it. Woo. But it's a lot of fun, and again, missing out a lot of features, but out of the box, this is one of the most difficult games to actually play. But when it comes to playing with this wireless Hori racing wheel, I must say that I really enjoyed myself, despite having none of the fancy features that we've seen before. So the wireless dongle is absolutely a great plug-and-play solution. You plug it in and you can actually play all of your games without any problem. However, the question remains, do you really need the wireless connectivity? Let's say if you're having this gigantic TV on your wall with next to it a PlayStation, you don't want to have the cable dinging around. Yeah, this thing is kind of cool. You plug it in and you can just put this thing on the table. A simple table will be more than enough because everything is very basic. You don't have any rumble, force feedback whatsoever, and you can just play all your games. I just want to have like let's say an overview of a couple of games. Dirt was quite difficult to play, but Wreckfest was a lot of fun. Gran Turismo 7 was a very nice one actually, and also Project Cars 3. I really enjoyed myself playing this. Let me know in the comments what do you think of the wireless Hori racing wheel. Thank you all for watching. Consider subscribing, hit the little bell, because it would be great to see you in the next video.